is. Now, something that people often get intimidated by is specifically colors. Colors are always really hard to work with sometimes, especially if it's on a piece that you're not very comfortable with yet. That's why black and white is normally, for me anyway, a really soothing way to start, because there's really no pressure. You don't know what palette you're going to use yet. So it still also allows you to figure out light direction and shape and feel of the character without going too seriously. I don't know if that makes any sense.
So you don't suggest using color right off the bat?
For me, I prefer, for me it distracts. I prefer using black and white from the start, because then I can clearly see where are my highlights, where are my shadows. And then something that also works really well for my line of work is that if I don't have a specific palette in mind, and my client doesn't really know what colors he wants this concept to be yet, I'll show you this technique in the second half. It basically allows you to modify all the colors on go without doing the classic hue saturation, awkward, and having colors break up in a funny way. The way I'm going to show you guys to how I color is just a preference in terms of, like, I can on the go switch a specific color at any given time and not be worried about blends or shading errors or so on and so forth. It sounds complicated, but it's not going to be, trust me. You just watch and you'll see something.
Just like she mentioned before, there are lots of different methods.
Yes. It's just my personal preference, but it's always going to be like the way I do something in Photoshop isn't going to be different from how another person does it in Photoshop, and they're going to be like, no, this is the better method, and I'll say, no, this is my favorite method. It's so many different ways to do something. So don't be afraid to try things. It's fun. Yes.
Questions?
It's very silent. I feel like I had pressure.
I've done silhouettes before where I'll either with a marker or on the computer, I'll just use a gray, a mid-value gray. And then I can work into the whites or work into the darks, lights and darks later, okay? It's always good, though, to think in those three possibilities. The darkest darks, the mediums, and the lightest. Then you don't have to worry about the in-betweens. They'll tend to take care of themselves as you move on, all right? And also, if you have strong values, darks, lights, and mediums, mid-values, and they're distinctly separate from each other, the piece is going to have a better possibility of having good roundness and also reading better in general. Okay? And that'll make the color more successful.
So, let's see.
How fast do you usually do a concept like this?
The silhouette or this shading stage?
Normal work day.
Oh, normal work day.
Pressures, etc.
If I have from scratch, usually I start with a 3/4 view. So drawing up really quickly and whatnot, and then for the 3/4 view, I get about a day to 2 days to finalize that. And that is including all the variants and silhouettes and sketches for them to go through and pick one and go like, oh, I kind of like the direction of that one, refine that for me. So 2 days is actually very generous where I'm at anyways, because I'm very much a jack of all trades. So I'll be doing texture work, I'll be doing advertisements and helping out with miscellaneous thing across Tripwire. So many times when I'm working on something that is at the time a concept, people will be coming up to me going like, by the way, we have an advertisement coming in that has higher prior. And I'll be like, cool, no more drawing, let's do advertising. So concepting as such is, in my workplace, it varies a lot in terms of time and time spent and how long I can stay on a piece before I need to go over and help with something else. Now in other studios that might be a different case altogether, but from experience I've found that as a concept artist you can be expected to do all sorts of things, anything from textures to characters to creatures to environments. It really just depends on what your studio is like and what your client's needs are, and that's always going to be quite different from place to place.
For a 2-day schedule, 1 or 2-day schedule on a character, would that be brought up to a presentation level? Or
No.
good reading production level, so they can see what you mean, but it's not perfectly?
It will, for 2 days, I'm giving them a lot of concepts and a lot of sketches. There will be nothing that is absolutely finished yet. It's all going to be very rough, but it's going to be readable enough for them to be able to show that, okay, that's a female with this type of outfit, or this is a male with this type of outfit, and here are the possible variants for that outfit. But everything stays relatively rough. After that, after the idea is approved and they know what idea that they want, then I get some time to flesh it out, not a lot, and then it goes into, how do you call it, turnaround mode, which is basically your front, your side, your back, the other side. Yes.
So it's very much about communication.
Very much about communication, indeed.
Is it very much about figuring out what they want, or having you figure out what you want?
It depends. Sometimes the client doesn't know what they want. They'll come up and, like, if you're freelancing, for instance, your client can come up and they're always the most fun.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'm looking for it needs to be a female character, it needs to have a big weapon, and it needs to have a skirt. That's not cliche, not at all.
Yeah.
And so when you have clients that have cliche ideas or something that you know is already existing and that might not be the best for their product, I mean, sure, you don't really have a say in it. However, it doesn't stop you from taking some free time on your own, draft up ideas, and go, well, how about this direction? I also did your direction, but how about this direction? Sometimes it isn't really a bad idea to give them some extra ideas because maybe they haven't even thought about it. And so if you're a creative person and you have some ideas that you think will give more life to a concept, don't be shy. Like, draw it up on your free time, not on your client's time, and present it to them, because you could very well help them improve their product.
It's a big part of the beginning of the job to get what the client, get what the lead wants, nail that down, talk with them, go back and forth. I mean, you quite honestly have to start getting into the art and showing them something, and then maybe they'll know better what they want. But it's much talking up front and maybe even asking them for examples, all right, references, that can help too.
Yep.
Okay.
And sometimes they don't have references. Sometimes they only have a vision in their head, and you have to provide the references. So go like, hey, is this the type of direction you want? And they'll say yay or nay, and you work together to find something that is like a middle ground between, they're happy and they're not happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And try to do as much as that ahead of just randomly just burning up the pencil, burning up the computer. Because you can end up wasting a lot of time, doing a lot of work, and then they go, oh, no, nothing like that. You want to definitely get them corralled in, too, and that's it. You want to corral them as much as they want to communicate to you what to do. It's very much part of your job. Help them figure it out, or you figure out what they want.
Whoops, that's way too much Zoom. Here's another thing. As you work, especially in the silhouette stage, flip your canvas.
Why is that?
The reason for that is because if you draw something and you're continuously staring at that one drawing from that one angle the entire time, you're going to go blind to it. You're not going to notice it until you flip it. As soon as you flip it, I'm guaranteeing you're going to see at least one thing that stands out to you going like, that looks weird. But you can't pinpoint why. The reason being is because as soon as you flip the canvas or turn the image upside down, all of a sudden your eyes has fooled itself to thinking that it's looking at a new picture. This is what you have to do is continuously as you work. It's basically continuously fooling your brain into thinking, I'm looking at a new picture. Is this still looking correct? Is the anatomy still correct? Is the composition still correct? Flipping it and checking it is basically giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. Is this actually going in the direction that I wanted to do? Is really, really important. So for instance, in Photoshop, it's super simple. Image rotation, flip canvas horizontally. See that? Now, you may not see it, but I see a couple of things already that are extremely wrong. So by doing that, you're telling, well, right now, he was very S-shaped. So to me, that looked incredibly wrong. Now, with a warp tool, save yourself a little bit of work, and you can switch that out. Sometimes the warp tools are not going to be able to help you all the way, and other times it will. So it's one of those things that you're going to have to just, find a workflow that works for you in terms of helping fix those things.
So now it looks more balanced.
More balanced, less S shape on his body, and fix that out.
I did the same thing yesterday on a project.
Yes. So flip your canvas, check yourself.
Sometimes you might even cut and paste and rotate and move something around.
Yep. So now that looks pretty accurate, but then you have to flip it back and have a look again and go like, okay, that's okay. However, and then you notice, this arm is kind of tiny. That looks weird. And, you fix that up as well. The warp tool in Photoshop is actually really, really helpful for those reasons. You can do a lot of changes for very little time. However, don't rely on it completely. You still want to make sure that you draw things traditionally and check things out for yourself. If my English is a little strange, I do apologize. It's not my native language, so don't be surprised if I use an expression or something that you probably never heard in, 20 years or ever. That would probably be why.
It's endearing.
It's not. It's embarrassing. But yes, check yourself. Flip the canvas.
Does anybody have any questions?
It's very silent.
No?
It makes me feel
It's the
weird.
first session of the day, so.
Oh, everyone is hungover, probably. Jesus, this thing. All right, so let's put it a little bit further away from my face. That might actually
Did
help.
you always want to be a concept artist?
I wanted to, my biggest dream when I was a kid was to see my creations come alive. That was my biggest thing. And by coming alive, I mean cartoons, seeing everything move, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I guess I've always wanted to be a concept artist because I've always wanted to see my ideas come to life like a Disney movie, if you will. It was a very long road, though. It's not a road that is particularly easy to travel.
You're
But
probably still on it.
I'm very much still on it. I don't think that road is ever going to end. Something that is really important for yourselves is that if you want it bad enough, you're going to have to work really hard to get it. I'm originally from Sweden. I came here about 10 years ago. Next year, it's going to be 10 years. I had no degree in drawing. I basically have self-taught since I was able to hold a pen. And so in order to get a job, I needed to have that piece of paper that says I could draw. And classic art institutes and such like that, it really wasn't something that interested me because I didn't find that it would give me enough for what I wanted to do. So instead, I applied for Full Sail University down in Florida, which had an intensive education for about, 4 years, crushed down into 2, with basically studies around the clock. When I went through there, you could have labs 5 o'clock in the morning, you could have a lecture at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you had, regular lectures then in the day as well. It was a very interesting experience. But for me, it helped really well, and it taught me modeling, animation, rigging, scripting, all sorts of things. It basically expanded the portfolio that I needed in order to get a job. Now, in other cases, you may not want to take that route. If you have confidence in your drawing skills and you feel that that's the only thing I need in order to get a job, then by all means. It really just depends on what kind of field you're looking for. Are you going to be a concept artist? Are you going to be in the gaming industry, in the movie industry? Are you going to do panels? Are you going to do covers for books? There's so many ways you can actually utilize your art skills, but you need to choose the field, and you need to make sure that you have the skills suitable for that field. Does that make sense?
Just a general education in design, and even if self-taught, getting to know your anatomy, getting to know all of the compositional things.
Yeah, I mean, basically the internet is one thing that people underestimate sometimes. There are tons of online classes that cost nothing. There are tons of ways to actually gain knowledge through that. Another thing is that there's a lot of freeware now. There are basically versions of Photoshop that someone has made. I can't remember the open source stuff that basically have almost all the tool that Photoshop has, but for free. So there are literally almost no excuses to sit down with a piece of software and learn it these days.
Going back to the silhouettes, this is a silhouette, sometimes called an open silhouette. They should be nice and open. You should be collapsing. You should have a character like this, because obviously if I'm blacked out and my arms are in like this, I'm just going to look like a little of a head and then something with no arms, maybe some bumps poking out from here. So you want these characters to kind of have some air, open up between them. Even the fingers, you can see the fingers are gesturing. Whereas the hands, the expression later on when the face is all there, and the overall gesture of the body are the three tools you really have to communicate in your arts. And you want to make the best of those, especially when it's just a simple silhouette. And even later on, the silhouette is still there, and now you'll have the added benefit by an expression and all the details and accoutrements of your character, which will further say what the character is.
Yes.
I just noticed her fingers are nice and open. It's all leading towards the expression she wants from this character, this happy explosion of energy that this little
Say
character
yay!
has. Yes, Marcus?
You said the word gesture made me wonder, Louise, do you use actual gesture drawings when you're coming up with your concept for the silhouettes?
Gesture drawings as in, I'm sorry, the term is...
The really quick,
Oh, okay. You mean as in just sketching out ideas and whatnot? Sure. I mean...
Look like little scribbles, but somehow...
Well, let's test that theory, shall we? So, when I start on a new character, let's say, before it gets into a silhouette phase, there's a couple ways you can do it. It really is whatever you're comfortable with as a person. When I start on a character, oh goodness gracious, this UI. I normally work on a desktop. The Surface Pro, it doesn't really do it justice. It's, so as I said, I usually work with a hard round pressure sized brush, and when I'm working out a character, I basically block it out really roughly. And I don't even think about the final shape yet. I'm just thinking, okay, so what kind of pose is this character going to stand in or sit in? What is he going to do? And I get that shape down first. And after I'm happy with the shape, I start fleshing it out. So in my case, these drawings help a lot. Just like messing it out there, getting the proportions roughly right, and figuring out how big is this dude? How small is this dude? How big, like how much of a volume is he going to take on the paper? But you can already start seeing like the posture he's going to have at the end. You know, it's one of those things that, you know, you learn as you go.
And this keeps you thinking and developing and worrying about the most important parts of the character, the volumes, the balance, the general shape and design, and not worrying so much about the eye color or, you know, what's going to be, what the jewelry's going to look like, that sort of stuff. All that stuff will fall flat if you rush too quickly into the detail.
Yep.
Or anywhere near the detail.
Yeah, detail, I mean, I love drawing details. Details is probably my favorite part of any drawing. Putting in all those little nitty-gritty things that you don't normally pay attention to, but that I always include in a drawing. But when you're first sketching things out like this, you want to keep it loose. You want to keep it, you know, quick, so that you can quickly see. It's like, is this the direction I want this to be? It's like, does this pose work? But eventually, so once I finish this out, it becomes, you know, a finished silhouette where you have everything is clean. You can clearly see what the posture is, clearly see what the character is doing, so on and so forth. But when I first start out, like you saw, it's super rough. But don't waste time. That's why it has to be rough. Nail it out, put out a ton of these. And when you're happy with it, and you're like, oh, that posture looks good, then you refine it. These don't take more than like a few minutes. It shouldn't take more than a few minutes. If it takes that long, well, keep drawing until it takes less time. It's practice makes perfect. You're never, ever, ever going to be able to look at a tutorial and go like, I can do that. And then you sit down and you do the exact same thing in the same amount of time. That's not going to happen. Be realistic to yourself and give yourself a break. You know, take the time you need. And if you can manage to do it in that time, hooray! You know, you just became as good as that person that you were just watching. I mean, take that to heart and get encouraged by that, because guess what? You just made something awesome in a very short amount of time. Pat yourself on the back. No one else is going to do it. You don't need to have your mom sitting next to you going like, that looks great, honey. That's not what you need. What you need is to keep yourself encouraged and keep yourself going. So anyways, sorry, sidetracked.
And you can use a combination of blocking out a volume, just quick shapes with lines to figure out what the pose is. You know, it could be a lot of things. You can scribble into it and sharpen up the lines, darken lines until something is really developing from it. Again, not worrying about any of the details or anything that's really not important, not getting ahead of yourself before the most important parts of it are established.
Yes.
And you only get used to that by trying it. And a lot of, in fact, just the other day in my class, I was talking to students in storyboarding and saying, you know, gesturing or quickly proofing out something is a skill in and of itself. And people often, you know, when you first presented with it, like my first life drawing class or drawing class, I went in there and I got some artsy professor, you know, who was a good professor, but I'm a punk kid. And she goes, do this and this and this, the essence of movement and line and volume and balance and this and that. I'm like, that looks like a crappy drawing. Look at mine. I spent 4 hours, over 4 weeks on this, you know. That's, you know, all the details there. That's drawing. And you little by little realize there's something there. And there's different ways of achieving it, but getting to the better essence of what makes that character, its character or the movement or the pose.
Yeah.
And you only get good at it by doing it. And you get good at it also by timing yourself, like Louise was saying. Give yourself 5 minutes. Okay, give yourself, you know, don't sit down and do a 20-minute gesture. I used to think a 20-minute drawing was, you know, short. Now that's forever. You know, I'll knock out 5, 6, 30 quick drawings in that, at least right in the beginning. All right, and vet out some ideas and figure out where I'm going, and then maybe take 2 or 3 of those and evolve them onto the next page or move them along. Yeah, that's another thing with the either quick gestures in a short format. You can go from one to the next, carrying on from the last, whatever you thought was successful, and continuing to work on what still wasn't there. But you get good by just doing that and timing yourself.
Yeah.
And at the end of 5 seconds, yeah, gesture should be about 5 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, minute and a half. 5 minutes is a lot. Do you still need a little more time? Well, there's more time. Go for it. But as you work on that skill, you get better. And you start seeing there really is something here. And I really am starting to feel good about these. And you're taking the pressure off yourself, trying to make it look pretty. It looks ugly before it's pretty.
Yeah. And here's another thing. A lot of people think that, okay, well, I'm super happy about this drawing. I'm always going to be super happy about this drawing. I'm the best. And then they stop evolving. Okay, so the moment you feel that way and you are not able to look at your drawing and see an improvement or see something that you need to change, that's the moment you stop evolving as an artist. Who do I need to kill? Okay, cool. Outside.
I didn't even turn mine off.
No, but in all honesty, look at your old drawings. If you start seeing errors on your drawings, even if it's like the day after, good. That means that your eye is already evolving and you are able to see things that you can correct. This is not a bad thing. You should be more worried if you can look at an old drawing, like a couple of years old, and go like, this looks fine. Well, that means that you haven't evolved much. That means that you should be drawing more. The more you start seeing things that are incorrect with your drawings, the better. Because that means that you're already discovering the errors and you can fix them. If you don't see them, what is there to fix? So, it's a very good thing.
Got a question over here.
Sure.
suggestions for software, especially thinking about it from like professional to beginner type of thing, or beginner to professional level?
So you want some suggestions about what software to use?
Yeah, like I hear a lot of things, and like I'm mainly programming paint, but I'm interested in picking up digital drawing more. And I just hear like a ton of different things, and some people are like skip over those and go straight to Photoshop, and so on and so forth.
It really depends on your wallet as well. Photoshop CC is an amazing, amazing program in my opinion. It's my favorite one. I've tried a number of them in my days, but Photoshop I keep coming back to. However, they actually aren't very expensive anymore. Photoshop Suite is now on a monthly plan rather than a full like couple of grand, which it used to be. So you can get Photoshop for as little as like $15 a month, I think.
Maybe even cheaper than that.
Maybe even cheaper than that. There you go, even there. So basically, if you have the allowance to do a subscription-based living on something like Photoshop, I would definitely go with Photoshop because there's so much you can use these tools for, since it's not so limited. You can even animate in Photoshop. There are also 3D functionality in Photoshop now, so for texturing and painting, it's amazing. It's still in the beginning stages, but what I'm seeing already is helping my work immensely. If you're not able to do a subscription-based program like Photoshop, there are others, and there are freeware alternatives too. However, you cannot expect the functionality to be as good. There's going to be some jankiness. There's going to be some things that it's going to leave you frustrated, but it's nothing that you can't work with. I know there's GIMP out there.
GIMP, I've used GIMP.
Yeah, GIMP is free to my knowledge, and that's always something that a couple of my friends are using still since they're poor students. So there are freeware options out there. Don't ignore them. They're definitely going to help you out.
I would suggest, though, if you find a freeware or a really cheap program, find one that is trying to look like, not in an illegal way, but just is going to give you the same sort of training as if you were on Photoshop, if you've got to go cheap. Because I'm keying on what you said, a professional set of programs. Well, you want to work towards that, so eventually you haven't put a ton of time in towards knowing some really esoteric, weird program outside that you're the whiz at, and then suddenly you're going to switch in and learn a ton more. All right? You want
Yeah.
sort of a lateral transfer into Photoshop or Painter. Do you use Painter?
I've used Painter a little bit. I don't particularly like it. The layer system in the version that I last tried wasn't particularly amazing to me. But then again, that's been a number of years ago. I've been a very religious Photoshop fanatic, so can't say that anything about the newest versions in that regard.
I tried to switch over, or at least kind of get some parity on Painter too, and I ended up going back to Photoshop.
Okay. Now, let's be honest with one another here. If you're serious about your drawing and you're not living on the streets and you have a part-time job, $15 a month, $10 a month is not a lot of money. I'm willing to bet that a very large percentage of you play MOBAs or MMOs or similar, which are subscription-based, which means the money that you're spending on those games, you could afford Photoshop with that money. Don't lie to yourselves. And you would get a lot more out of it. If you're serious about this career and you want to excel in this career, drop the MMOs, drop the MOBAs, spend that money on something that is actually going to help you out in your life, which is a program that you can evolve with and get better with. Don't just throw it out at the AAA people, which is kind of weird for me to say since I'm a developer myself. But in all honesty, though, if you don't have a job in the industry and you want a job in the industry, that's the way to go. Sacrifice some of your game time and get that software so you can start getting better.
I'm glad you said time. It's not just money, it's your time. If you say you want to be this or be that, then start being that by doing it.
Yep.
Okay? Or else you're just saying it and
Not doing
it's
it.
not even worth that much of a statement if you're not putting the time in.
No. And I get very upset with people that are giving me excuses that are like, well, I don't have time. It's like, well, what do you do for a living? Part-time job. And I'm like, You have all the time in the world. You don't have a house yet. You don't have a full-time job yet. Make time. Do it.
Yes.
Hello.
You were saying earlier about how, this is just one style of getting the job done.
Yes.
There's other ways, but,
Louise.
what are like the biggest obstacles that you faced in learning how to use like a particular style, and how did it help you like
Overcome them?
these problems and other kinds of methods you tried, and basically like what were the biggest problems? How did you overcome them in picking the style that you work in?
Well,
So what she asked is,
Yeah.
what were the biggest obstacles, or what were the real things you need to learn to figure out what your style is and where you wanted to take your art? Is there a specific style that you use?
I constantly
constant
try new
person?
things, to be honest. This is just a current version of what I like working with because it's relatively fast for me. Previously, I did sketches. I didn't do so much silhouettes. I kept to sketches more. And it really just depends on what you feel comfortable with. If you haven't found a work method that applies to you, experiment. Look at tutorial videos. YouTube is full of amateur and professional artists that are showing them step-by-step instructions of how they start and finish a product. So look at their tutorials, apply some of their techniques to your techniques, and see if it works for you. The only way you're going to be able to find your style is by, looking at others, see how they do it, and then figuring out something that works for you. There's absolutely no harm in that. It took me many years to find something that was comfortable for me to draw with, like a particular brush or a particular work pace, that kind of thing. It's not going to come in a day. And your style especially is something that you're probably not even going to see. Other people are the ones that notice when your picture has a particular style. Does that make sense?
So they shouldn't get hung up on style?
No.
So much as you're drawing well?
Just draw. Just draw. Eventually you'll have a niche and a type of line work that is exclusive to you because you're developing it as you're drawing. The more you draw, the more defined your style is going to be. So it sounds silly, but seriously, don't stop drawing. Just keep at it, and eventually you'll find super comfortable. You'll become very comfortable with what you're doing.
Marcus?
That made me think of something, an interesting point. When you get really good at a particular style and you go to work with an art director who wants you to do something a very specific way to work with the team and
Mhm.
to have a cohesive, art project,
Yeah.
how long does it take you to switch, to merge the way you do things with their particular request?
It depends on how different the technique is. So, for instance, if they are drawing a very Tim Burton-esque, style, and I am drawing more of a fantastical, like classic fantasy, soft edges and round shapes kind of style, well, you're going to have to start from the basics, like do sketches, do line work, try and imitate what you're seeing, and going like, okay, I obviously need to train in doing this type of style more than the other. And eventually, by, in lack of a better word, by drawing what you're seeing, you learn it. It's imitation, but imitation is what makes us evolve. It's, it's really, really basic, actually. But it's hard to explain. I don't know what the word is. Swedish. Nah.
What's the Swedish word for it?
No, it's hard to express. But, whoa, I just rotated something. Okay, cool. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll try and elaborate. But basically, in order to find someone else's style and become better at it, you simply just have to do like you did in middle school and low school. You have your favorite Disney drawing right next to you. You have a blank sheet of paper. You look at it, you draw. You look at it, you draw. And continuously doing that and putting them next to one another. Go like, how close am I? Not even close. Let's try again. Keep at it until you learn how to do that particular style.
I've got a couple comments about that. Now this is for a freelancer. If you're a staff person, you can't necessarily do this, but I've turned down jobs saying, no, I don't do that Danger Girl. I actually did take the job, but at first I was like, no, I don't do, I was doing a advertising thing and some animations for Rage Guitars for Peavey, I guess the company, and they wanted Danger Girl. They sent great reference. They sent Battle Chasers and all this over-colorized lens flare stuff, and they wanted me to do that. At first I was like, no, but they pushed me and I raised the price and I said yes. But you can say no, all right? Although, as far as for style, you don't have a style other than the stuff they hand you in the folder or talk to you about in the meeting on Monday morning if you want to keep your job.
Yeah.
Okay? They've already vetted you out though, so they've already got probably more confidence than you probably maybe have in yourself, because I always have to like buck myself up, like I can do this, I can do this. And, you know, it's usually the contractor going, or the client or the people I'm working with, like, yeah, you can. Don't knock yourself down, because artists tend to do that. We feel like we're faking it along the way. All right.
We're
so
terribly
you can always turn
harsh.
it down. What?
We're terribly harsh. We're
Oh,
the
yeah.
worst critics we have
And that's
ourselves.
actually a good thing. That's a good thing. Keeps you growing. All right. Unless it's
Yes.
debilitating. That's separate. Okay.
Well,
But on the other side, yeah, you have to practice and just repetitive and check it out and analyze and work through it, okay? And your hand will still come through. I guess that's your style will always be there. It's your hand, it's your mind, it's your choices. For example, I've got a job right now and I've started a sketchbook. I'm trying to figure out how to draw 8 to 13-year-old children for in a comic booky style, and I've got about 17 pages now and expect to burn up the entire 150-page sketchbook. And you can see it later of it. And I'm really in the beginning of it. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll figure out how through just drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing.
yep.
That's how it happens. You get used to it. It's like any skill. Oh, yes.
You were saying earlier, you know, how artists are always like self-critical when we were talking about, you know, you said you don't do this kind of style and you raise the price and it's okay, and that kind of things. And like as a freelancer, I've made like friends with a lot of other freelancers, and we're always constantly talking about like how to handle that kind of thing when you aren't sure. Basically, how much to charge for your work and how to gauge and how to, you know, talk to people who are just like, so what's your rate, as opposed to someone who's like, I'm going to pay you this much for this.
That's always a tough question.
It is.
It is. It's kind of off topic. We can have a conversation about that, but really as much as you can get. And when you're beginning, sometimes free. So, I mean, I don't know
Don't
if
do
that's
free
healthy.
for very long,
No,
though.
because it does. It hurts you and it hurts your industry. and-
Yep.
Yeah, and even if you're doing something free, when it makes money, get your money then. If it's making money, then you need to be paid. You know, just with your friends. You know, I don't know. I go up and down depending on what the market will bear. Simple economics. I know that's not as specific as you want it, but it's really best thing is to ask for questions of people who've gone through it, and they'll only be able to tell you about the specific things. I'll tell you what I need to. And when I'm losing money, and I still sometimes might do it because it's a fun job, but yeah, that's a far-ranging topic.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Don't undersell yourself, though. Please do not become the person that is like, oh, I'll do it for free. You're my buddy. You're, all right, think about it like this. If you're ever unsure about a situation like this, you don't have... You will always have the jackass that comes up and goes like, "Well, you're my friend. I have the. If you have time, just for fun, could you draw me this?" It's like, sure, if you're in the mood and you have the time and you feel like you want to do that person a favor, sure, by all means, draw something for them, but don't make it become a leech effect, because then you just wasted all your money on them. You just wasted potential money and time on them. And it sounds harsh, but that's just a reality of things. You don't have a chef. You can't walk up to a chef and go like, "Hi, so I have this party on Saturday. Do you think you just can come by and whip something up free? You know, it would be cool, right? Right?" You don't do that. You don't go into a restaurant and walk into their kitchen and go like, "Hi, by the way, could I just try, you know, could you just whip something up for me?" It's insulting. And it's the same thing for artists. A lot of artists get trampled that way because they don't think about it
Yeah.
in the correct way.
Might be the only field that it really happens.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
So if you're beginning and you're starting to make a client base for yourself, sure, that's one thing. But if you're trying to establish yourself and you want to quit doing the freebie business, you really should, because it's hurting yourself. People start taking you for granted, and next thing you know, you're not making any money at all. So be careful with that. Don't let people leech on you. It's not good. It won't feed you. It won't make your career any better. And so have some self-respect and think about the whole chef analogy, because that's exactly how it is. And you really do
And
not
they'll
want to be that.
understand that too. They probably don't see it, at least your friends at that level don't see it as that.
And they need
necessarily.
to.
They think you
They
just
need to
do
see it.
for fun.
No, it's very rude. They need to see it differently. So.
What are some, like, I've heard that there's lots of, like, butting of heads between the artists and the coders, like, within, like, the game industry, because, like, the artists may try to realize their idea, but as far as applying it into the game, like, you can't do that as easily, or
Okay.
software restraints and so on and so forth. So, like, what are some of the issues that, like, working, like, transferring your art to, like, I guess, to games? Like, what are some of the issues that come along with that you have faced, or that you know other people have faced, or things like that?
So I'm not ignoring you, by the way. I'm just staring intently at the screen like an idiot. Please repeat the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the question is, what are some of the things you've come across in trying to realize what you want through the art and have it work into the actual works of the game, the coding and the gameplay?
So
Give some
this is
examples.
this is something that the struggle is real. Whenever that happens, there's a couple things you can do, and your riggers especially are going to love you for it. Riggers are usually the ones in character design that you really need to have a nice relationship with, especially in an indie environment. The riggers are basically your best friends, and they can also be your most biggest hurdle to overcome. If you're not familiar, riggers are basically the ones that put in the skeletons in the final 3D models and enable them to move and to form. Now, when you draw up a concept and you need to know how many bones are available to you and how much of a ability to draw and move with this particular character or creature, talk to your rigger. It sounds really alien to some people, but seriously, walk up to your rigger, show them the concept and go, this is what we're trying to do, is this possible? If he's a good rigger, or she, he'll give you feedback and tell you that, well, that ponytail might not get any bones in it, so it probably won't deform, it will just stick out like a stick.
Make it smaller, so it can
yeah.
just be stuck there.
Communicate with one another. And if you can't do that and you don't have access to your riggers, talk to your art director. The art director should also have good information about this and communicate between, he's the one that decides what goes and what doesn't. But most times, if there's a disconnect or if there's a lack of time, go directly to your animators and go directly to your riggers and talk to them and see, is this possible? And if it isn't, work out a solution together. I do this a lot these days with our riggers, and they really appreciate it. Because if there's a character for, I don't know, KF2, and it has an outfit that is unusual to what we normally do, they can easily tell me that, okay, well, that's not going to deform properly. No, that's going to be too many things hanging out. We don't have a system to support that, and so on and so forth. Work with them. You'll be surprised with how much they will be willing to work with you. And they will be very grateful for you taking the time to talk to them. Because otherwise, they get the model, and they're standing there going like, what? Seriously? And they'll be frustrated. And you don't want people to be frustrated. You're at the bottom of the chain. The stuff that you do go up the chain. Make sure that transition is smooth. Talk to people. Communicate, especially in a small environment.
Two comments on that, or a couple small comments on
Yeah.
that. One, be a solution. You're a professional. Okay, you're not a fine artist. Okay, you're not up in Greenwich Village doing whatever, you know, looking for shows at a gallery. You're actually doing something with your art, all right? You're gonna make a product. It's in a team. You should be a solutions person always, okay? So you're just, you know, how do I make this work? How can I help? Okay, it's not you, it's not your ego, and it's not ultimately even your vision.
Yep.
You're part of it. Yes, you're that part to lend it and finalize it, and you are the vision and the ideas person, but something came before you, something is coming after you. You've got, as a professional, to know what's coming to you and make the demands on them. In other words, remember we were talking about questioning the clients, making sure they know what they want so you can do your job and give it to them, and you want to give it to them. It's not what you want to do unless it's your company, in which case you're probably not going to draw it, you're probably going to hire other people to draw it, because at that point you won't have any time to do the concept anymore.
Yeah.
All right, but you also have to know where it's going, to the rigger. You know, this big bulky character would have a tough time unless, you know, you knew and they know what to do with this form, with the painting, the weights, and all that sort of stuff. So
Yep.
it just doesn't collapse and bend in the wrong places and all these sort of things. It's good and professional to know where you fit into the line.
And it also helps you a lot when you get that experience in terms of concepting, because now you know, after a couple of drawings and collaborations with your team, you suddenly know what your limitations are. You suddenly know what your abilities can be. So the next concept that you come up with, you're like, I know we can do this armor now. It's going to be amazing. And then you can suddenly produce things efficiently, quicker, and come up with solutions that you didn't even think of before. Be a team player. Like Tom said, don't let your ego get in the way. That's the worst thing you can have as an artist, is an ego. It's fine to look at your drawing and go like, oh, well, this is starting to actually shape up. This is nice. I am happy with this drawing. Don't plaster it on DeviantArt or Facebook. I hate when people do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is just a 20-minute sketch. And it's like a 2-hour plus like finished drawing. I'm just like, dude, get over yourself. That is not a sketch. I hate when people overplay these things to make sure that they get comments and flamboyance and, oh, this is beautiful. Like, if you want a fan base, sure, go to DeviantArt. Draw some fan art. I guarantee you. They're going to fawn every year and it's going, oh, my little pony is so beautiful. I mean, if you want a fan base like that and not evolve and get stuck in a rut and get praised every day for copying other people's work, sure, do it. If you want your ego inflated like that, do it. If you want hard earned respect and earn a career and get something that has not been done before and get proper praise, do something different. Work for yourself. Come up with some good ideas. Stick to those ideas. Feed them to people and get feedback. Be open to criticism and work with them.
Which is communication. Criticism is communication, okay?
Yes.
You're a business person. Art is your business. All right, so it'll help you with your mindset towards contracts, towards pricing your work, and also fitting into the job and working with people.
Yes.
It's a general mindset.
Very much so. I am so focused on his head right now. No,
So you're
poor
up to the
thing.
point where you've kind of pulled them out, you're putting in some thinner lines to draw out some detail in the
Yep.
volumes, you're smoothing things, all those rough lines.
Yep.
And marks are now getting smooth. You know, sometimes you can, she's just kind of, what are you using?
I'm using the soft tool that, like I mentioned earlier. So there's the soft touch tool, which is very similar to Photoshop's default soft brush. And I pick a value, like your color picker is your best friend. Pick a very high value and all of a sudden you have a gradation that actually goes down and softens, which is really nice. And keep doing that across your entire image. Pick a color, shade it. If it's too light, then pick a darker color, take a smaller brush, shade it. Basically work in all those details. And eventually you end up with a surface that, more resembles what you were after, and then you start refining it, and next thing you know, you have a result that you're more happy with.
And different methods-wise, there's what Louice just explained, or there's also the smudge tool, which I don't use, but
I love
people
the
use.
smudge tool.
There's the blur tool. There's also selecting whole areas and blurring it. Different types of blur, directional blurs, these sort of things to get the surface.
Let me show
Quickly
you.
and blend those lines, because at first, just like the whole form, just chopping it out to get design-wise. Now the smaller forms, just putting color by value beside it, just working it out in general terms. Now she's getting to the point of finding the in-betweens between dark to middle value to light value.
Let me show you the magic of the smudge
And
tool.
it's starting to look more like an end product.
So the smudge tool is both a fiend and a beautiful tool, in my opinion. Thank you for mentioning that. It is an amazing tool. The reason I like the smudge tool so much is because it's like a Photoshop brush and an eraser in one. And it's not just a hard brush, it can be the soft brush as well. It is a really, really good tool. Now, the reason I say this is because you can change up the strength, which is right now set on 82, and you can change the brush, which is right now a hard brush. And if you get used to it enough, it's going to take some practice because it's a different method of working with it. But once you get used to it, you just saved yourself a bunch of time, and you can work really quickly in getting the shapes that you want without having to switch between both tools all the time, which is normally the brush and the eraser, and soft brush, hard brush. It's a really, really good tool. I've seen artists that use it exclusively after they have blocked out colors. I've started to use that method myself, and I really, really like it. Like here, so all these edges that are uneven that I want to work on, smudge tool is perfect for that because you can draw a color from the inside or you can draw it from the outside and just push it down and remove it. It's a really nice tool. It does take a bit of an angling and figuring out how it works for
Is
you.
anything,
But I love this tool.
It is quick. It's for refining shape and also surface, blending things.
Yes.
Maybe I ought to use it more.
It's fun. It's fun. Join the smudge clan.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about the 3D tools in Photoshop and
Yes.
how you can now use it to texture models. Is that something you find yourself actually using professionally, or is it something you've been
Yes. No, just recently I used it. I can't say for what. But recently I did. It is not very often that I get to use it, but with Photoshop CC, I really love it. It basically allows you, just like how you project things in Mudbox and you have texturing on Mudbox and move the model and so on and so forth. Now you can basically just open up an OBJ in Photoshop and you can move around in 3D space and paint on the seams there, remove all the seams. You can even have the UVs on a layer, on a file right next to you. So you have the UVs painted and you can paint directly on the UVs or on the model, fix up the seams that way. And another thing is that this is the most fun. If you have a Photoshop layered file for your UVs and textures, you can fix that and keep those layers intact while you're painting out the seams. This is huge. Normally you would basically paint it and save out a flat image and all your work would be like, But this actually contains all the layers since it's a Photoshop file and it works in Photoshop. So I think the more they work on this, the better for workflow is going to happen. It's really cool. I'm very excited about this feature.
It's 11 o'clock. So
Oh,
we can take a
sorry.
break.
Yes.
Guys, it's 11 o'clock. This is the
Oops.
last question for this session, but we're going to have a half an hour break, a little less than a half an hour, over by 5 minutes. So at the bottom of the hour, at 11:30, we'll be starting part 2.
We're coloring.
And you're going to be coloring this, or do you have another piece you're gonna be coloring?
We can do either or. I have some stuff.
All right.
It'll be cool.
So let's everybody take a break, and if you want to come on back, she'll get more into the painting and